Water surged through the streets of Cebu, carrying away everything the 11-year-old boy, Marco, had ever known. Barefoot, drenched, and clutching his battered guitar, he waded through the chaos with only his dog, Max, by his side. When Simon Cowell later watched Marco perform on the AGT stage, he didn't just see a singer, he saw survival, courage, and a heart that refused to break. The rain had been relentless for days, turning the normally bustling streets of Cebu into roaring rivers. Water surged through alleys and homes, carrying with it furniture, trinkets, and memories of families who had lived there for generations. For 11-year-old Marco, the flood was no longer just a storm, it was a battle for survival. He clutched his battered guitar above his head, protecting it from the muddy water that lapped at his bare legs, while his dog Max, a loyal brown mutt, paddled beside him, eyes wide with fear but steadfastly following Marco wherever he went. Everywhere he looked, chaos reigned. Neighbors clung to rooftops, shouting for help, children cried for parents they could no longer see, the streets were a blur of floating debris. But amidst the chaos, Marco found a small island of calm, his music. Even with trembling hands and soaked clothes, he plucked a soft melody from his guitar, singing in a quiet, steady voice. The tune was simple, a song of hope, of endurance, of courage. Max lay close by when they could reach dry spots, letting out soft whines that seemed to harmonize with Marco's singing. He had no time to feel sorry for himself. The flood had taken nearly everything, his home, his school books, even the small savings he kept in a tin can. But Marco refused to let despair sink in. Every chord he struck, every note he sang, was a promise, he and Max would survive, no matter what. He imagined that somehow, his song would reach someone, somewhere, who would see their struggle and understand the bravery of the powerless against nature's fury. As night fell, the floodwaters continued to rise, reflecting the lightning flashes across the sky. Marco's voice didn't falter, if anything, it grew stronger. People on rooftops glanced down at the small boy singing into the storm, and some couldn't help but pause, listening in awe. Despite the destruction surrounding him, there was a light in Marco's eyes. A spark of unbroken hope, a determination that no disaster could extinguish. By the time the rescue boats arrived, Marco and Max were exhausted but alive. They had weathered the storm with courage, unity, and an unwavering spirit. And though the streets of Cebu were soaked and scarred, the melody of Marco's song lingered in the hearts of those who heard it, a quiet reminder that even in the darkest moments, hope could survive. When the rescue teams finally arrived, Marco and Max were shivering, soaked to the bone, but alive. The volunteers lifted them carefully into a small boat, their clothes clinging to them, mud streaked across their faces. Marco's guitar, the one thing he had protected all through the flood, was battered and damp, yet still intact. He cradled it like a lifeline, knowing that it was more than just wood and strings, it was a symbol of his resilience, the voice of his courage. At the temporary shelter, volunteers handed blankets and warm food. Children laughed as they dried off, but Marco quietly strummed his guitar, drawing soft chords that resonated through the crowded room. A local journalist, drawn by the boy's quiet dignity and the small, faithful dog at his side, knelt and filmed him. Marco sang a simple song about hope, survival, and the small joys that endure even when the world seems lost. Max rested his head on Marco's lap, occasionally lifting it to howl in gentle harmony, as if adding his voice to the song. Within hours, the footage was online. Social media erupted. People from across the Philippines and around the world shared the clip, captivated by the boy's courage, the bond with his dog, and the raw emotion of the song. Comments poured in, "This boy is a hero. The world needs to see this. So much bravery in one child." Donations started arriving, food, clothes, and support for flood victims. But the most unexpected message came a few days later. Marco had been invited to audition for America's Got Talent 2025. At first, Marco couldn't believe it. The AGT stage was a dream he had never dared to imagine, let alone reach after losing so much to the flood. But as he looked down at Max, who wagged his tail with unwavering trust, Marco realized that this opportunity wasn't just for fame. It was a chance to share his story, to show the world that courage and hope could survive even the worst disasters. That night, Marco played for the volunteers and children at the shelter, his song carrying through the air like a promise. Each note reminded him that life could be hard, but hope could be louder. And as the sun set over the flooded city, drying the streets bit by bit, Marco smiled at Max and whispered, "We're going to sing for everyone now, for those who lost everything, and for those who need hope." The bright lights of the AGT stage were unlike anything Marco had ever seen. The cavernous theater buzzed with anticipation, a sea of faces, cameras flashing, and judges perched behind a long, gleaming table. The roar of the audience hit him like a tidal wave, and for a moment, he froze, gripping his battered guitar tightly. Max, his loyal brown dog, sat calmly at his side, sensing the boy's nerves and resting his head gently against Marco's leg. That small gesture was all Marco needed, a reminder that he wasn't alone. Backstage, the production crew encouraged him, but it was Max who gave him courage. Marco whispered, "We made it, boy. Now, let's show them everything we have." He inhaled deeply, feeling the weight of the flood behind him, the sleepless nights, the fear, and the hope that had carried him here. Every step onto the stage was a step out of survival and into a dream he had never dared to imagine. The stage doors opened, and the spotlight illuminated Marco and Max. Thousands of eyes turned to them, and the judges leaned forward with curiosity. Simon Cowell, usually stern and guarded, raised an eyebrow. Marco's heart pounded, but he closed his eyes for a brief second, recalling the flooded streets of Cebu, the nights he had clutched his guitar above the rising waters, and the promise he had made to survive. He strummed the first chord. The sound was fragile but steady, echoing through the theater. Then, his voice filled the air, raw, trembling, yet infused with hope and determination. "Through the storm, I held on tight. With my best friend by my side, I faced the night. Every tear, every fear, can't break what's inside." Max lifted his head and let out a soft, soulful howl, harmonizing with the song. The audience fell silent, captivated not by perfection, but by the depth of emotion emanating from the boy and his dog. Each note was more than music, it was survival, courage, and unshakable love, expressed in its purest form. By the final chorus, tears streamed down the faces of judges and audience alike. Marco's trembling voice had grown into a song of triumph, his guitar chords carrying every hardship he had endured. As he strummed the last note, the theater held its breath, and then erupted into applause. The standing ovation was thunderous, but the most meaningful gaze was from Simon Cowell, whose eyes reflected awe and deep respect. For Marco, the performance wasn't just about the competition. It was proof that even after the darkest storms, hope, courage, and love could shine brighter than any spotlight. The final chord of Marco's song lingered in the air, vibrating with the echoes of his courage. For a heartbeat, the entire AGT theater was frozen. Every eye in the room remained fixed on the small boy and his loyal dog, the weight of his story pressing into the hearts of everyone present. Simon Cowell, usually reserved and hard to impress, leaned forward, his expression softening as he fought back tears. The audience erupted in a wave of applause, yet for Marco, it felt like the world had slowed down. He looked down at Max, who sat faithfully by his side, tail wagging ever so slightly. The little dog had been his anchor through the flood, through hunger, through fear, and now, through this moment of triumph. Marco's chest swelled with emotion as he realized the magnitude of what had just happened. He wasn't performing for fame or accolades, he was performing for survival, hope, and the promise that he could rise above anything. Simon cleared his throat, voice trembling with genuine emotion. "Marco," he said slowly, his words deliberate, "I've seen thousands of performances in my life. I've judged acts from all over the world, and yet, I've never seen courage like yours, never seen hope expressed so purely in music. That was extraordinary." Heidi, Sophia, and Howie shared nods, visibly moved, some wiping tears from their eyes. "You didn't just sing a song," Heidi said softly, "you gave us a glimpse into a heart that refused to break, and a spirit that refused to be defeated." Then came the moment that would define the night. Howie Mandel, with a gleam of excitement in his eyes, pressed the golden buzzer. A cascade of golden confetti rained down, shimmering under the stage lights. Marco dropped to his knees in disbelief, pulling Max into a tight embrace. The dog barked joyfully, licking his face, sensing the overwhelming joy and relief of the boy. The cheering audience became a blur of gold and applause. Marco's tears ran freely, mixing with raindrops from the memories of floods past. Every hardship and fear that had led him to this moment now crystallized into pure triumph. Simon stepped forward and placed a hand on his shoulder. "You've shown the world that courage isn't just surviving, it's facing every storm and still daring to sing." As Marco and Max sat amid the glittering confetti, the message was clear: even the smallest voices, even the most fragile dreams, can rise and shine when guided by hope, loyalty, and love. This was more than a performance, it was a testament to the unbreakable human spirit. Months had passed since Marco's unforgettable AGT performance, yet the world still spoke of the small Filipino boy who had survived a devastating flood and moved millions with his song. Clips of him strumming his battered guitar while Max harmonized softly went viral again and again, inspiring acts of kindness, donations for disaster relief, and messages of hope from every corner of the globe. Marco had become more than a contestant, he had become a symbol of resilience and the power of the human spirit. Returning to Cebu, Marco stepped off the plane with Max by his side, the sun casting a golden glow over the familiar streets. The city looked the same, yet everything felt different. This was the place where he had faced storms, where he had clung to hope while the waters rose, and where the bond with his loyal dog had kept him alive. Now, it was also the place where his dreams had taken flight. At the marketplace where he once played for coins, children and locals gathered around. They had heard of his story and wanted to witness the boy who had touched the world. Marco lifted his guitar, and as he strummed the first chord, the crowd went silent, captivated. Max sat faithfully beside him, tail swishing in rhythm. Marco sang the song that had captured hearts worldwide, a song of courage, survival, and unwavering hope. Every note carried the weight of the floods, the nights of fear, and the strength he had found within himself. The performance inspired more than applause. Donations for local schools, flood relief, and stray animals poured in. Children learned that even in hardship, kindness and perseverance could lead to extraordinary outcomes. Marco visited the shelters and spoke gently to other children, sharing his story and encouraging them to hold on to hope, no matter how dire circumstances seemed. As the sun set over Cebu, Marco looked at Max and whispered, "We did it, buddy. We showed them what hope can do." The dog nudged his hand, as if saying, "We always will." In that moment, Marco understood something profound: it wasn't the fame or the golden buzzer that mattered most. It was the ability to inspire, to touch hearts, and to prove that adversity could give birth to courage, love, and kindness. Standing in the streets where he had once struggled, Marco smiled, knowing that he and Max had transformed not only their own lives but also the lives of countless others, a testament to the unstoppable power of hope.